Inside a warehouse somewhere in the United States of America, 32 men and women were challenged to express themselves, their beliefs, their values, and a glimpse of who they truly are for all the world to see. The experiment they chose to participate in was simply called The Room.
The Room. Sarah dumped a third packet of sugar into her coffee, a habit her ex-wife, Karen, had always criticized. The sweetness was a small rebellion now, just one of many she'd embraced since the divorce. The steam fogged her wire-rimmed glasses as she surveyed her half of the warehouse. She'd carefully arranged a display that included protest signs, a BLM flag, climate change photos, and a wall of prescription bottles. Yet something felt missing. Maybe that's why she'd arrived at dawn again. She was hoping the early light might reveal what her space needed next. Sarah knew that her teenage daughter, Emma, would know what was needed. Emma had her eye for detail and her other mother's gift for brutal honesty. "Too obvious, Mom," she would have said. "Where's the hope in all this?" But Emma was with Karen this month, probably rolling her eyes at both her mother's political posts on Facebook, where they had become somewhat famous. Only Sarah and her opponent were allowed inside the warehouse. That was one of the rules they had agreed to when they applied to be part of the project. A social, cultural experiment. At least that's what the producers had told them. The final result would be the public premiere of the warehouse, where 16 left-leaning and 16 right-leaning contestants would have their work scrutinized. And yet it wasn't a contest exactly. In fact, they were simply called participants, and the goal of the experiment was kept vague. Sarah's thoughts were disturbed by the sound of 2x4s scraping against concrete. Marcus must have arrived early too. She'd never seen him. Participants weren't allowed to cross the divide. But she'd grown familiar with his routine over the past week. She had noticed that his morning routine began with the Lord's Prayer, muttered loud enough to carry through the curtain, followed by 2 hours of steady work before getting lunch with his buddies. A rowdy, MAGA hat-wearing group of construction workers that gathered at the local diner to give Marcus advice, no doubt. The participants were allowed to share pictures and videos, but they had to build their displays alone. "Good morning, neighbor," she called out, surprising herself. It was their first direct interaction. The scraping stopped. She heard him set something down, followed by the muffled groan of his bad knee, another detail she'd learned from his daily video diary on Insta. "Morning," he replied, his voice carrying the soft drawl of eastern North Carolina. "You're here early." "Couldn't sleep. Too many ideas," Sarah replied before moving closer to the curtain. "What are you working on, if you don't mind me asking?" "Building an altar," he said after a moment. "To freedom." Sarah's eyebrows lifted. "An altar?" "Got some pieces of the border wall mounted on a base, adding flags, pictures of veterans." His voice softened as he said, "And my granddad's Purple Heart." Through his video posts, Sarah had learned that Marcus had raised his daughter alone after his wife died in a car accident, a head-on collision with an illegal immigrant who was drunk. Marcus had spent 20 years building houses, proud that he'd never taken a government handout, despite the nagging pain in his knee. His altar wasn't just political symbolism, it was personal history. "My uncle was in Vietnam," she offered, thinking of her Uncle James, who'd taught her to develop photos in his makeshift darkroom. He'd called it therapy, his way of finding beauty again after the war. He never really talked about it, though. "They rarely do," Marcus said. His voice carried the weight of understanding. Your camera work. Saw some of it online yesterday. The series about the homeless encampment. It's good. Honest. Sarah felt her cheeks warm at the unexpected compliment. She'd spent 15 years documenting social issues, believing that if people could just see the reality of others' struggles, they'd have to care. Some days she still believed in empathy. On other days, not so much. You know what's funny? Marcus said, interrupting her thoughts. I can't see what you're doing over there, but I keep wondering about it. Keep imagining it. Sometimes. He trailed off, and she heard him lift another piece of wood. Sometimes what? Sometimes I try to imagine what you're up to over there. I expect it's pretty nice, and probably has a woman's touch to it. His voice carried the same vulnerability she'd heard when he spoke about his daughter in his videos. Like maybe I'm wrong about you people. You mean us Democrats? Sarah asked, wanting clarification. I suppose we both could be wrong about some things. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she set down her coffee. I think about your side too, she admitted. Last night, actually, I had a dream. There was a door in the curtain. What kind of door? Marcus asked. Interior? Exterior? Wood door? Metal? Does it matter? Sarah asked. Actually, it was made from some kind of marble, very white marble, and it was ornate. It was quite an impressive door. Did you open it? No. She thought about Emma, about Karen, about all the relationships fractured by the divide this curtain represented. Did I what? Marcus asked. Did you open the door? You were the one who saw the door, in a dream, right? Right. I just told you that, didn't I? And you didn't open it, did you? You decided not to, Marcus said. The sounds of woodworking resumed. The thud of boards, the bright trill of nails dropped on the floor, then the pounding of his hammer. But then he paused for a moment. Well, Marcus said finally, I did say I was wondering what you're making over there. I did say that. You could come over, Sarah said. That would be a rule violation, Marcus reminded her. True. Probably a bad idea, huh? Probably, Marcus said. Sarah stepped back from the curtain and lifted her camera to document the morning light catching the purple fabric, making it glow like a bruise healing. They had a week left to finish their spaces, a week left to tell their stories. Yet somehow, she thought, the real story was happening right here, in the space between certainties. She turned back to her wall of bills and bottles, adding each piece with deliberate care. From the other side came the steady sounds of Marcus's work, punctuated occasionally by silence as he paused to take a picture. Two parents, two artists in their own way, building monuments to their separate truths while their children grew up in a world divided by purple curtains. Through the high windows, the morning sun continued to rise, casting shadows that stretched from both sides toward the center. Sarah thought about Emma's question, where's the hope in all this? Then, for the first time, she had an answer. It was here, in the quiet morning light, in the gentle curiosity that lived alongside conviction, in the dreams of doors that she and Marcus might be brave enough to open once the competition had ended.
This is a production by Human Echo, the audio lab at Fugitive Poets Press, where we enjoy making things for you to read and listened to.